I'm the house director here at Hartford Dismas House. Welcome to the second of our speaker series. I want to start out talking about when things don't go ideally here at Hartford Dismas House, when a resident breaks a house rule or relapses or something to that effect, and it enacts something where I ask them to leave as director and it goes to our house meeting. It's called an appeals process, where I ultimately don't get the decision of whether or not they stay here. It falls on the remaining residents, and can be very lengthy, very intense, very cathartic process, because we go around the room and each remaining resident will talk to the person in question and have the opportunity to ask for more information or give feedback, their thoughts, or more times than not support. And what I've learned over time is it's a very powerful process. I think that's so much more helpful to the individual than, you messed up, you're out of here, bye. Getting that feedback to reflect on what happened longer term is so much more beneficial. Kind of a quick jump here, but I want to talk about quickly in 2017, I was the assistant house director. I went to my first event here. I was very overwhelmed with the support of the Upper Valley community. It was wonderful. People were talking to me left and right. And this guy stops me. He heard that I was a correctional officer at one point, and he wanted to hear about my experience as a correctional officer. What were jails like? What do I think the jails could do better? And I just talked to him like everybody else and moved on with my evening. Fast forward about an hour, I realized that guy I was talking to was Donovan, our keynote speaker. First time I ever met him. I think just that little conversation we had, which he probably doesn't remember, shows how genuine of a person he is. He's really interested in what he says. So quick background on TJ. He became the Vermont Attorney General in 2016. He began his legal career as Assistant District Attorney in Philadelphia before coming back home to Vermont to work as the Deputy State's Attorney, and then for 10 years as the State's Attorney of Chittenden County. And although he serves as Vermont's chief prosecutor, TJ has demonstrated a great empathy for all those involved in the criminal process. For Vermonters struggling with a drug addiction, he has sought alternatives to incarceration, noting that Vermont spends more on incarceration than higher education. And he understands that housing for people leaving incarceration is a major problem, where this is where Dismas comes in. His efforts include advocating for medical treatment on demand for drug addiction, alternatives to incarceration, and vigorous enforcement coupled with meaningful intervention and effective prevention strategies. TJ has been a steady and loyal friend of Dismas of Vermont. He's been on the board for the Burlington Dismas House. We've known him for years. We're delighted to have him here on our speaker series, and he's going to give us an enlightened view of restorative justice from the prosecutor's perspective.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks for that those kind words and great introduction. I do remember that conversation. It was at the annual Dismas dinner over the river in New Hampshire. But great to see you, and Jennifer, thank you for your introduction as well. It's great to see everybody. Great to see one of my dear friends and hero, Rita Whalen McCaffrey. Rita, good to see you, albeit virtually. Guys, I'm working from home like everybody else, and I don't know if you saw me. I've been moving back and forth. We're having a plumbing issue right now, so what a time we're in. So I got a plumbing issue. I got two kids home from school because it's school vacation week up here, and my wife's upstairs working. So I may seem a little frazzled, but we're going to do this. I'm really thrilled to be with you today to talk about the power of the prosecutor. I'm really grateful for Dismas for organizing these speaker series, and I'm a little bit chagrined. I heard my good friend Bobby Sands went first, so now I'm nervous that I have to fill his big shoes, because I know he did such a tremendous job, because he's such a thought leader in the area of criminal justice reform and restorative justice. But I think it's important that the role that Dismas is playing in holding these forums, because As we all know, we're at an inflection point in the criminal justice system. And Vermont, I think, is well positioned to really lead the nation to shrink the footprint of our criminal justice system, to redefine and reimagine what public safety looks like, because it's public safety services. It's not just criminal justice. It's public safety. And I've always started at the view that public safety, the best form of public safety, is when we have a healthy community. And when you talk about jails, and Jeff knows this, and so many people know this, the folks who we lock up in this state are folks who are struggling with addiction, folks who suffer from mental illness, people living in poverty, the issues of not having secure housing, not having secure food, being unemployed or underemployed for a variety of reasons, not having the education that others may have. And I think if you've been in this business long enough, you start to ask the question, why? And I can remember being a prosecutor, not only in Philadelphia. I grew up in Burlington. As Jeff said, after law school, I went down and worked as an assistant DA in Philly, but frankly, also in the courtrooms here in Vermont, that you'd see the same people. You'd see poor people. You'd see people of color. And it was that definition of insanity. You'd do the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result, and it wouldn't work. And I think for me, a couple things shaped my view on the criminal justice system, and really that power of being a prosecutor that I really want to touch on, because it's so vitally important. You know, as I said, I grew up in Burlington, and to the shock of many, I was not a saint growing up. As I like to say, I had probably a little bit too much youthful exuberance in my formative years. And I went to public school, and I think if there was a party to attend, perhaps I might have been the first one there and the last to leave. And I got into my share of trouble, both at home with my parents, at school, and with the law. I got arrested at 18. Did something incredibly stupid that I still am ashamed of and regret. I got drunk, I got into a fight. And I went through the criminal justice system. And my father was a lawyer. And my father, seems like yesterday, left us in 2005. And he just somebody I immensely admire and still look up to this day. An incredibly humble person, gentle. He was what I would call a street lawyer, a solo practitioner in Burlington, and a street lawyer in the sense that if you walked in off the street, he tried to help you. And he really believed in people. He believed that you didn't define people by their worst moments in life, that you believe in redemption, and you believe not only in second chances, but third and fourth and fifth chances. And I had the resources, both social and financial, that my future was protected at 18. I got what's called a deferred sentence, meaning that the record would be expunged and I could go on and do great things. Or so I was told. And that experience was a real searing experience for me. Because I can still remember, I think, the shame and the embarrassment of it. I can. I have a distinct memory at 18 years old, sitting on top of our stairs, listening to my mother cry the night I came home, worried about me, worried about my future. But my future was protected. And I went to law school. It was a good wake-up call for me. Went to college, went to law school. I think progressively as I matured, perhaps started to focus a little bit more on my academics and less the social agenda, and started to really understand, I think, what the power of the law was, and always wanted to be in the courtroom. And that's when I became a prosecutor. And I can remember being in Philadelphia, and the power of the prosecutor is really this immense, awesome power, because it's the power to investigate, it's the power to subpoena, it's the power to charge that I don't think we talk enough about. We certainly talk about convictions, but that charge oftentimes is enough to carry those collateral consequences and really ruin people's lives. And being in Philadelphia, I saw firsthand that power. I can remember going up to a community in North Philadelphia, 17th and Montgomery by Temple University. First time I think I ever really saw kind of an urban blighted area. And you used to have to do preliminary hearings in these courtrooms, aside next to, that were part of the police precincts. And we were prosecuting almost exclusively young African-American men for possession with intent to deliver crack cocaine. I'm a kid from the south end of Burlington, Vermont. Trees, parks, schools, stores, everything that you would, for me, public safety has always been about perception. Do you feel safe? Absolutely, where I grew up. I didn't walk in this neighborhood. I didn't see parks. I didn't see schools. I didn't see businesses. I saw boarded up buildings. I saw trash. I saw graffiti. You felt scared. And every day I would go and I'd prosecute these cases. And I'm walking one day and looking around and seeing a place that was completely foreign to me. And I finally said, you know what? If I grew up here, I might be doing the same thing these guys are. We're all products of our environment. And life ain't fair. And the starting line is not the same for everybody. So we shouldn't expect people to finish the race the same time. But it does matter what schools you go to. It does matter about those public institutions of health, of education, of justice that exist or don't exist in your community. And I saw that firsthand. And when I came back to Burlington and continued to be a prosecutor, I saw it again. And the only difference this time was a lot of the people that I saw in the courtroom, I grew up with. And they were good people. And to flash back 20 years prior, we were the same. I can remember a young guy, played freshman football with him. And, looking back, I think with the power of that reflection and that life experience, you understand some of the challenges people were facing back then that at 15, 16, 17 years old, you didn't quite recognize or were able to articulate. But with the power of hindsight, you now understand. I remember this kid who was in my class, played sports with him. And fast forward 20, 25 years, a petition shows up on my desk. And he was from a tough family, from a poor family, from a family that I think the only way I would describe it probably lived in generational poverty, had those impacts of generational contacts with the criminal justice system. But we were the same that freshman year. But 25 years later, I'm now the elected state's attorney, and a petition comes across my desk. And he's asking for an expungement, erase an old conviction for getting into a fight. And you think about those two paths. Middle-class kid, somebody who had those resources, versus another person, same community, different neighborhoods, different families, different upbringings, different resources, and the impact that conviction 25 years later had on him. Still fighting to get it erased, to get back to the path of being a productive, law-abiding citizen, because that's what the criminal justice system has done through the power of prosecutors, through the power of convictions and criminal records. it has completely taken away economic opportunity and upward mobility from thousands of people, disproportionately people of color and the poor. And it has marginalized an entire subset of our population in the name of public safety, and it has not worked. We can do things differently by reimagining what a justice system actually looks like. That mission of Dismas about reconciliation, that belief that I was taught and was a beneficiary of, that people make mistakes, but we don't define them by their worst moments. And we do believe in the power of recovery and redemption, and that people can change. Right? And that power of that prosecutor, I've always said, the most dangerous person in our criminal justice system is the 25-year-old prosecutor standing in judgment of human failings because they haven't had the experience, that rich tapestry of life that we've all had, of success, of failure. And they stand in judgment, and it's an academic exercise of looking at a piece of paper saying, can I make out the elements of this crime? Can I make out a felony? Can I make, how many felonies? Do I ask for bail? And all these decisions that are made at the bar of the court, sometimes within minutes, have lifelong impacts on people who go through the criminal justice system. And that's what we've tried to change. How have we done it? I was state's attorney. I invested and pushed alternatives to our criminal justice system. And as Attorney General, the first thing I did was create a new division in the Attorney General's office called the Community Justice Division. And the goal was to address really those geographic disparities that exist in our 14 counties. As we all know, we have 14 different elected prosecutors in our counties. That sometimes means we have 14 different systems of justice. Somebody in Hartford should be treated the same as somebody in Burlington, regardless of who the prosecutor is. That we have those disparities of resources that exist in terms of diversion. And so what I did as Attorney General, sorry, I keep seeing things popping up, the chats, keep them coming. I'm gonna get to it. Was to create this community justice division. And the goal was to create a consistent approach across our state because the AG is the only office that has concurrent jurisdiction throughout the state. And so we started this community justice division, and the goal was to bring about some uniformity in terms of diversion programs to keep people out of the criminal justice system. And now, for the first time in our history, we've achieved that. We have 3 different programs run out of my office that now exist in every county that push people out of the criminal justice system. That traditional diversion program, a program called TAMRAC, named after the tree that focuses on that mental health and substance abuse disorder, linking people with folks in the community, as well as now pretrial services for people who have more acute needs. Thousands of Vermonters have been diverted from the criminal justice system because of those programs in every county. You want to reduce the prison population in this state, in this country, create community program based on public health strategies. That means to invest in healthcare. That means to lower the barriers and then to link people with those resources in the community, not through probation. Let me tell you one of the fundamental structural defects of the Vermont criminal justice system. Our Department of Correction is in our AHS, Agency of Human Services division, which is fine, but they only get involved at the conclusion of a case, once a case has been adjudicated. And you ever tell anybody who's suffering from addiction, they don't need help 9 months down the road after a trial or the court process, they need it now. And so to create these exit ramps, as I say, early on in our system is going to continue to divert people, link them up with the necessary public health services in our community, reduce our incarceration, and enhance our public safety by getting people healthy, give them an opportunity, believing in the dignity of everybody. And look, I know there are people who are dangerous, but let me tell you something. It is such a small percentage of folks. And so in our criminal justice system. And so when you look at that highway to our jails, and by the way, we shouldn't be building more jails in this state. Let me just say that at the outset. That highway to jail, we should have exit ramps all the way based on risk, based on need. Now, I saw a couple of questions on bail reform. Yes, I believe in bail reform. In fact, one of the first things we did as AG when I came in 27 was to get bail reform, which was to lower the threshold of monetary bail to $200. People say, well, that's an arbitrary number. Why $200? Here's why. The Vermont Constitution says people have a constitutional right to bail, so you may need a nominal amount of bail. Here's what I'd like to see. And this is not, I think we can get rid of cash bail. It may need a constitutional amendment. I think we can get rid of cash bail. And it should be based, because bail is about, are you going to appear in court? Are you a flight risk? Well, look, if you're homeless and you don't have this is the abuse of the system. If you're homeless and you don't have a house because you don't have ties to the community, prosecutors say you're a flight risk. Impose bail. And I may say $500 isn't a lot of money, but to somebody who's dirt poor, that's a fortune. And they sit in jail and they do the only rational thing that you can do. You plead out for credit for time served. You take the conviction. Well, what does that conviction mean? That conviction now tags you with all those collateral consequences. Impacts on housing, impacts on jobs, impacts on education, the further marginalization of people. So yes, we need bail reform. But I want to go to a system. Illinois just did this. New Jersey's done this. Base it on risk, not on flight risk, on public safety risk. Take out cash bail, base it on risk. I think we can do it. That would get rid of cash bail. It's a constitutional amendment. So right now, I don't think you can just say, let's go to $1, nominal amount of $1 for cash bail without having that risk factor taken into account on some folks, because some people are dangerous and we just have to acknowledge that. The other issue that I want to talk about is expungements. Expungements are an incredibly powerful tool. I've led the fight to expand the expungement law, which allows people to petition to have their old criminal convictions erased. Expungement, the legal answer is as if it never happened. My office has held expungement clinics throughout the state. We're actually doing one in Burlington next Friday. And it's incredibly powerful. I was talking to a probation officer about a week or two ago up in Caledonia County. And she told me the story of this fellow who left Vermont, had 17 convictions, and had him as a young guy. And through our now raising a family, married, working hard, has a good job, and we were able to, and here's the point about expungements, and again, not defining people by their worst moments. I don't want to be judged at what I did at 18. I don't think anybody does. But that's what we do with these criminal records. They follow people for their lives, and they have to continue to answer for them. And it's just simply not fair, because that label never tells the full story. You're a thief? I stole a 12-pack of beer 25 years ago. And we're going to label you a thief for life and take away your opportunity to get a job? But this guy who 18 convictions or something, we were able to expunge 16 of them. And this probation officer said to me, 40-year-old man broke down crying. the power of giving people their life back, the power of actually saying to people, we believe in you, and treating people with dignity and respect. By actually taking that label that the state has put on somebody that has said that you are not worthy, that you are not part of our community. And when you think about that, you think about jail, that is the message that we physically remove you from our community. It's incredibly powerful and debilitating. I think that's why the mission of Dismas has always resonated with me, that power of reconciliation, that we're all part of this together, and that we all are extremely flawed people. But we believe in the goodness of each other. And if we can get to a criminal justice system that has less judgment, and more empathy, we can do great things. I just want to touch on a couple things. People talk about reentry. Because I know, Jen, you want to do questions, right? Okay. People talk about reentry, and I'm a supporter of reentry. Obviously, Dismas is a critical part of the reentry work. Let's focus on, if we do the front end work, housing, healthcare, education, jobs, that's reentry work. That is reentry work. And so I don't think we need to have this debate of reentry versus community on the front end of our system. If we make those investments in our community on the front end, which includes schools, which includes healthcare and mental health care, which includes affordable housing, education, jobs, that's public safety. And they can mix and match on the backside, because you all know this. The thing about jail is this. For the vast majority of people, you're going to get out. You're going to get out. And it's in our collective best interest to have people ready to re-enter society and be productive. So if we continue to, and we don't need, once people have paid their debt back to society, we don't need to continue to label them a criminal. Again, when you look at the landscape, it's only a small percent of folks who, in my opinion, truly pose a threat to public safety. The other thing I've been focused on as Attorney General has been opiates. And part of the effort of bringing about those programs to bring about that standard of care across Vermont and our 14 counties certainly has been because of the opiate epidemic. And to have treatment, to fund peer recovery sites, to understand that addiction truly is a disease and should be treated. I've never known a jail cell to treat addiction. To support this bill in the legislature that would allow essentially a therapeutic dosage of buprenorphine to be decriminalized. It's medicine. People shouldn't be a criminal trying to get it on the street. They're trying to make a rational choice. I've never met a heroin addict who wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be an addict today. It's medicine. We got to get people to it. But it's also about holding these corporations accountable that started this crisis. I've sued Purdue Pharma. I've sued the Sackler family. I've sued some distributors. We just resolved a settlement with McKinsey, which is a consulting firm, which their goal was to supercharge the sale of opiates, to target specific prescribers and patients. And when you think about that, and you think about the thousands of Vermonters who, had surgery and were prescribed some oxy, and you think about these forces and powers far greater than any of us have ever imagined that put that into motion, and the path of destruction that it caused for thousands of Vermonters is really unconscionable. And again, it's a reminder that addiction is not a personal failing. It really is a disease. And a lot of these folks, I remember it. I was asked in March of 2012, what's the number one issue in the state of Vermont? Prescription drugs, no doubt about it. By January of 2014, Governor Shellman then gave his now famous State of the State address based solely on the heroin epidemic. That transition from oxys to heroin, now dealing with an increase in our overdose deaths in our state during this pandemic we're in now. And so we really got to hold these corporations accountable, but we got to make sure when the money comes that it goes back to the community. It goes back to the community, and that we listen to people who have the lived experience to tell us what works, and to understand that it's not a one size fits all for folks. It's not a one size fits all, that this is a deeply personal journey, and that we should have a menu of options for people. But whatever those options are, they should be accessible. They should be affordable, and people should be able to get the help they need when they need it. There's been a lot of talk about how do we change the way we prosecute and police. And I think if we continue to invest in restorative justice by building those community supports, by building out those public health networks and resources, by changing the way we police, by having more trust with police and less force, supported a change in the use of force bill. That's my dog Scout barking in the background if you hear him. Scout. To change that use of force law to necessary, away from reasonableness. You can reason away anything, to only necessary for all use of force, to build that trust back, and to really reimagine what public safety means. It's not arrests, it's not jail cells, it's not courtrooms, it's community. And understanding those social determinants of health, of housing, of education, mental illness, of trauma, of addiction, of poverty. That's the power of the prosecutor, to use his or her bully pulpit to talk about these issues, to change things, to say that these dollars, when we talk about where money goes, we should talk about a budget being a statement of values. And we should have prosecutors calling for those investments in our community. That's how we're going to change this system. I do think we can continue to reduce our incarceration and to enhance our public safety. We do need programs like Dismas, not only on the backside of our criminal justice sense in terms of reentry, but also on the front side, as that asset in that network of resources that are going to keep people safe. So I'll stop there because I think you only wanted me to go 25 minutes. I went 35 minutes. Sorry about that. And I'm happy to take any questions from folks. And I was trying to read the comments as they came in, but I couldn't keep up. So
that's fine, TJ.
TJ.
I'm happy to moderate, and you have already answered some of the questions. So we'll start with some of the wonderful questions that have come up in the chat box. The first is Linda, who asks, have you considered systems of incarceration from other countries like Denmark? Community and work are created more like a safe way to recreate new habits and life paths with the outdoor activities and so on. Yeah, I have. And in fact, I think it was in 2019, I went to Germany to look at their prison system. And I wish I could show you guys photos. I'm going to try, this will be awkward. Boy, it was nothing like our system. They looked like apartments. They had gardens.
People left during the day to go to work and came back. People paid even a nominal amount for their incarceration. And you think about that from a personal responsibility and investment, it was quite powerful. And I think that I don't support, there's been talk about building the super prison in Vermont. I don't support that. And the economics of jails is this, that if you build it, you got to fill it. And people should realize that you have those beds, you're going to fill them. And we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. Do we need places where people can go? Yes, we do. And I do think we should look towards the German model or other models, which don't resemble anything like a prison that we have. And, and I think, frankly, what I was told when I learned that the German history really informed their viewpoint on dignity of all people. And I think there's a great Nelson Mandela quote that said, the true test of a society is how it treats those who are incarcerated. And I think as a nation, we're probably failing on that standard.
Our next question comes from Megan, who's wondering if mental health services and drug rehab are offered in Vermont jails.
Yeah, I think they are. And you look, DOC, Vermont DOC used to do this great report, this annual report. I don't know if people would read it. I used to read it. It was great. They don't do it anymore. And you look at the number of people who are medicated, reading, I don't know the correct psychological drugs. I'm not sure I'm using the correct term there. But, you think about a jail, and Jeff, this, it's loud. It's no pride. I mean, it's not conducive to mental health treatment. And particularly with women in jail, you're dealing with a lot of trauma, that has never been addressed. And I think, we can talk about adverse childhood experiences and getting more into that and understanding really kind of where people are coming from to understand some of those issues. But jail is not the right place for mental health treatment or drug treatment. Now, look, that's got to be balanced against risk. So there's got to be some of it, but some people are going to be in jail. There is going to be that small cohort of folks who pose a threat to our public safety. But I think by and large, again, it's understanding that this stuff is a disease and it's better treated by medical professionals in the community. But yes, in jail, there are some services.
Wonderful. Thank you, TJ. So our next question, which is a really great one, comes from Linda. Do you think state's attorneys' offices should be staffed by more experienced attorneys rather than 25-year-old law school graduates who perhaps haven't had as much life experience? Or have you considered a system of mentoring of young attorneys by older attorneys?
Yes. I just want to show this picture. Can people see that? That's a German jail. I mean, that looks like an apartment building in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. Sorry, I'm seeing, but I mean, you see gardens. This isn't really working, but I think people can get a sense of it. It's just remarkable. That's a jail. And we have to think outside the box. And I don't know what the right answer is. I want to be clear about that. But I know building that traditional jail that we all understand as Americans is not the answer. So I do think we have to look elsewhere. Look, I think the prosecutors that make up this, the state's attorneys are really good, decent, hardworking folks. And they don't all agree with me, which is fine. They're independently elected. But I used to work with a fellow good friend of mine who his question during an interview process, which would really stump people, especially young prosecutors, was he'd say, "Have you ever been punched in the face?" You ever fall down drunk? And these applicants, really great attorneys and gone to fabulous schools, would just stop and have that deer in the headlights look. And he asked those questions because that's exactly what you're standing in judgment of. And so it's that human experience. You know, I hire enough people. I don't really look at where people went to school anymore. I couldn't tell you where. I don't care where people went to law school. In my office, I care about what motivates them. I care about those experiences that shape them, because that's going to tell me who they are. And it's a powerful thing to have that so much power to change, oftentimes unknowingly, people's lives in the name of public safety. Look, the easiest thing for a prosecutor to do is to recommend jail, because there's no risk. There's absolutely no risk with that. The most important quality of a prosecutor is restraint, is the willingness to say, no, I'm not going to charge. Is I can dismiss this, I can send it, actually believe in people. That takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage, because you're going to be the one answering the questions. And my sense and my experience has been this, and I've been wrong plenty of times. Most people get it. Most people understand this stuff is I'll tell you a quick story about a case. Boy, this could go on for hours, guys. I'm sorry. There was a great basketball player. And I love, like the McCaffreys, I love basketball. And there's a great high school basketball player in Chittenden County. And he had all the gifts. He was a good student. He was a great basketball, good-looking kid. He was charismatic. And he kept on getting in trouble. And some stuff was going on at home, no doubt. And he got thrown off the team, which, and ended up in the criminal justice system, had some issues with drugs. And I remember dismissing the case or doing something for him. I can't quite remember exactly what I did. But I tried to help him. And sure enough, he got in trouble again and got arrested. It was all over the news. And sure enough, the news was at my office saying, why'd you do this? I said, because I believed in him. And, I thought that doing something, giving a young person a shot, giving an opportunity was the right thing to do. And he just could never put it together. And I kind of lost track of him. And I remember maybe a year or two ago getting notified that he died of an overdose. And I think about that kid. And he had all the gifts. And we sometimes in government become very risk adverse towards helping people, for demonstrating some courage, because of the pushback and the fallout that could occur. And that's a real thing in the criminal justice system. And you gotta have some courage in this business, because I think most people are going to be with you most of the time, even when you get it wrong, if you believed in the folks for the right reason. Sorry, I just remember that story.
Thanks for sharing that, TJ. Very powerful. Nate has a really intriguing question. Are prosecutors generally aware of the harm done to children, incarceration of their parents?
I don't think so. I think some are. I think, we talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, probably should be mandated. I don't think so. And that's, I think it's a great question. And I think all those impacts that we talk about what incarceration brings, not only for children, but for the individual. We're not aware of it. We should be aware of it. I think I'm a little bit more in tune to it, just because, but for the grace of God, there go I. Again, well, I could have gone either way. And just because, it wasn't a second chance. I had about 6, 7, 8 second chances. And that's a privilege. I understand that. And I think I've tried to pay it forward by giving those multiple chances to people. And I think part of my struggle and part of this effort is, how do you standardize that? How do you embed that in a system? And that's the need to reform this system, because it can't be personality driven.
Leslie is interested to know what your position on decriminalization of all drugs is, as recently suggested by Sarah George.
Yeah, I don't support it. I don't think heroin should be legal. We're dealing with people who are dying in our state. I don't want to make it easier for people. I don't think people who struggle with addiction should go to jail. I think they should get help. People who sell it, though, people talk about Portugal all the time. What they don't talk about is the public investment of caseworkers that go out every single day to people in the community and make sure that they're getting their medicine, that they're going to their appointments. So it's not just let's decriminalize drugs. It's where's the complementary public health apparatus to help folks. And so I don't support the decriminalization of all drugs. Do I support a public health approach? Absolutely. And this is a debate that we should have, though. We shouldn't just say, hey, let's accept the status quo. I'm not saying that. But I think people need to understand that when they talk about Portugal, there is a robust public health apparatus that's in place of the criminal justice system. It's not just decriminalize drugs.
So there's been a lot of really wonderful discussion in the chat box about Vermont's incarceration of women and the building of a new women's prison. Yep. And is that something that you could respond to?
I struggle with that. I struggle with the idea of building a jail. I don't, now look, and I think a couple things. I think we need to understand that issue of trauma, particularly with women who are incarcerated, and really ask that question: should they be incarcerated? That's question one, and really dive down into what is the actual population that requires incarceration. Is there something of those photos that you probably couldn't see that I just posed that was much more therapeutic, that was much more respectful, that communicated a message of dignity, where you had those services, where you had the jobs, where you had the personal responsibility, and you truly got people ready to get out? One of the things I thought about, of course, it didn't go anywhere because I don't have the authority to do it. We see these colleges closing down in Vermont, and instead of them getting mothballed, why don't we say, where can we imagine something that's not a jail? If people need help, if they need housing, if they need mental health, they need addiction, if they need to deal with the issues of trauma. And that's my line of thinking. I don't support this idea of we just need to build a jail. I can't sign on to that. Because if you build it, you gotta fill it. You have to literally fill it to make the economics work. Oh, and by the way, incarcerating a woman, last time I checked, might be close to $80,000 a year. As Jeff said in his intro, we do spend more money on locking people up than in higher education in this state. That's a priority nobody supports. And last time I checked, college is not cheap either. But we're spending more on jails than college. And so I don't support the building of a jail. It's not to say keep people housed in this unsafe, unsanitary place, but reimagine something. Think outside the box. It doesn't have to be a fence with barbed wire. And start with this. No doubt people need help. I understand that. But start at, again, this concept of what incarceration is, that we are physically removing people from the community. We don't have to do that for some folks. We don't have to do it for everybody. And to reimagine what it looks like. And terrible things have happened to people. It's not an excuse. It's an acknowledgement of the complexities of it all. So it's going to take some vision. It's going to take some courage. It's going to take some money. But I don't support just the building of another prison.
So I want to go to Sue's question. When we first sent prisoners out of Vermont, the DOC refused to consider the impact on children of having their parents completely inaccessible to them. Do you see any improvement in that terribly wrong-headed attitude?
I don't know if I see any improvement. I don't support private prisons. I don't support people going out of state. And the answer back is, well, we don't have an alternative. And I think we do have an alternative, and it's in the community. It's in, frankly, in transitional housing. It's programs like Dismas. And, you know, I don't know if DLC still has the policy. And look, Jim Baker did a good job during COVID. I want to give Commissioner Baker credit. He did a good job trying to get out as many people as he could. That's the type of urgency we need, and we need to continue that. And when we talk about, well, where can people go? Housing is a major issue. Housing is a major issue. Invest in Dismas. Invest in Dismas. Invest in transitional housing, not just on the back end, on the front end too. And to really give people, you know, think about that, you know, people who aren't housed. That's by definition, that's a public safety risk, not only for them. I mean, if you're desperate, you're desperate. You know, I can remember as a kid, my mother on really cold nights would always say to us, pray for the homeless tonight. And I didn't really think about it as a kid. But you think about it now, and they're in such a desperate situation. Adding the issues of mental illness, of addiction, of poverty, it is complicated. We got to get, and it's not waiting for the blue lights to come. It's not waiting for that prosecutor. You know, one of the issues I just want to talk about on bail, I do think we need that risk. That's what Illinois has done and New Jersey. There's now a risk assessment, not risk of flight, but public safety risk. I worry when we talk about getting rid of cash bail or stop, you take away your tools. Every case is so different, guys. Every case is so different. Every person is unique. And you want that menu of options. And so I'm always hesitant to say, get rid of this, get rid of that. It's not black and white. It's so nuanced and gray and complex. But when we don't have alternatives, and think about Dismas for a second, operating on, I keep saying the front end, not waiting till somebody who's coming out of jail, but on front end where somebody should be housed. That's an option. That's a community option. During a pre-trial phase, live at Dismas, get settled, get the help you need. Let me tell you what happens in the criminal justice system, what everybody wants. People to be safe, because if they're safe, the community's safe. And if people are doing what they're doing, supposed to be doing, that's all we're looking for. But in the absence of that, you then impose all these conditions on people, and you load up these conditions that, frankly, none of us could comply with. None of us could comply with. How can you get to 5 different appointments when you don't have a car and you got 3 kids and you don't have any food? And then you're telling me I got to work too? And again, it's that lack of that experience of life, of understanding the complexities and that rich tapestry of life, of the ups and the downs and the failures and the setbacks and the success, and sometimes taking a step forward but then taking 2 back. That's life. And that's who you're dealing with in the criminal justice system. And I keep going back that it can't be personality driven. I know that. So the call for reform is, how do you make the systemic change? And it's hard, but having these discussions, frankly, is part of it. I just saw this. I just want to say, I'm just seeing, sorry, I can't keep up with all these comments. But the COSAs, the circles of they're the best. I think they're great. Again, this idea of support, reimagining and redefining what accountability means. Like, accountability means being accountable to your community member, to your neighbor. And I just have a sincere belief that people want to be successful. They just need an opportunity. They just need an opportunity. And I'm a Democrat, but I sound like a libertarian sometimes when I say, sometimes, honestly, we just need to get out of the way of people and let them live their lives.
So I think we have time for one more question, TJ. We've had such a rich discussion going on in the chat box as well. Thank you so much, everyone. And I think this is the perfect question to wrap up with from Carmen. Can you say something about your experience with processes of social reconciliation that can help individuals mend relationships in their communities?
Wow. Well, I'm such a believer in restorative justice and reparative boards, and I'll just talk very briefly about this experience that I've really been privileged to be part of in a limited way, but certainly part of. We had an investigation into allegations of murder and abuse at St. Joseph's Orphanage in Burlington, and certainly looked at it through a legal lens to see whether or not charges were warranted. But there was also a survivors group. And one of the things that I felt strongly about was making sure that they had a voice. And we were able to get funding for a facilitator who is experienced in restorative justice. And the healing and the power of this group has been remarkable. And I can't speak for them because it's not my experience. But I know when you give people an opportunity to be heard, when you validate experiences, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful stuff. I don't know if they'll achieve reconciliation, but I think that process is a powerful process. And it's really been a privilege to bear witness to that and to understand. Again, one of the gentlemen said to me that these folks are in their 60s and 70s. He said, we're the last surviving generation. And I thought about that. And these experiences that they suffered happened 50, 60 years ago. But it shaped their entire life to this day, and they're still suffering. And I think if we can remember that and understand that this journey of reconciliation is a journey, it's a process. and that we need to support it through our community justice centers, through reparative boards, through community involvement, through COSAs. That circle of support and accountability. It's powerful stuff. I'll just end with, I love the film Coming Home by Bess O'Brien. Really highlights the work of COSAs and the work of what public safety means. I keep going back to that. Public safety is when people are housed, when they're healthy, when they have a job, when they're involved in their community. It does not mean the courtroom. It doesn't mean jails. And how we talk at this inflection point, it's not, it may be criminal justice reform. I think it's more, how do we deliver public safety services in the 21st century? And to redefine what that means, and to talk about those institutions of education, of healthcare, of housing, of jobs, of opportunity, of dignity. That's what I'm looking for.
Great, thank you, TJ. We're going to turn things over to Jeff Backus to wrap up for us.
Yeah, thank you, TJ. That was actually really convenient that you mentioned Bess O'Brien and Coming Home. She will be our March 26th speaker. We'll be viewing a portion of Coming Home, and she'll be fielding questions and having a discussion about the strategies and challenges of people leaving incarceration and COSA. We hope to see everybody there. A copy of our first speaker series is on our website now. This one will be there shortly.
Well, thank you. And Bess and Bobby, you'll forget about this Donovan guy. Bess and Bobby, that will amaze you even more. They're incredible people.
Thank you so much, TJ, for spending this time with us. I'm sure we easily could have gone on another hour. And everyone, there will be a link up in the next week or so, so you can all revisit this. And again, please share. And the link to register for Bess O'Brien is in the chat. And that will also be up on our social media and be sent out in emails as well. And we hope you all have a great rest of the day. We hope to see you next month.
Great to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
We want to bring you back for 2 hours next time, TJ.
All right. Thank you.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much. Really, really fantastic information. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the chats. People were talking about all of, there were a lot of comments about how inspiring your stories were, and the comments and your responses. So I hope you have a chance to look at
them. I'll look at them right now. Thanks. And thanks for, this was great. I was really happy to do it. So thanks for having me. All right. Good to see everybody.
All right. Have a great rest of the day and good luck with your plumbing.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm still waiting to hear from the plumber.
Isn't that always the way?
Always on a Friday too, by the way.
Always.
Always on a Friday. Yeah. All right. Good to see you.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, TJ. Bye.
I was going to say, don't forget to let the dog in.
Poor Scout. Brooke, thank you so much for your help. It was so great to see you.
Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. And I'm glad I got to sit. And if there's anything that's needed in terms of like a follow-up or anything of that sort, just feel free to reach out to me. But it was great to participate and observe. This is really awesome. And I'm looking forward to watching next month's with Bess. It'll be so cool.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Be in touch if you need anything.
We will. Thanks. We'll be in touch to schedule another time for TJ to talk. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
And we really couldn't do that.
Hey, Rita. Hey, Zara.
Good job, Joan.
Thank you. Eleanor, I missed you at the last meeting. So fun. Oh my gosh, I could listen to TJ just talk about stories all day.
Good speaker. Good
it was interesting. There were other people I recognized, and one was who's been very, very involved in Family Place, Robin Voigt.
Okay.
And I think she and her husband, Steve, are big supporters of Dismas. And because she's so involved really in education, especially for those who don't have really good chances, and modeled their education system on a program she saw at Harvard. So they became one of the places to try out, you know, really good education for kids or for adults who don't have that chance for their children. So just someone to, I don't know, think about.
That's wonderful. Rita, thank you so much for being in touch with TJ and having him be our second speaker. That was awesome.
Yes.
I'll tell you something that his mother said to me at our annual Burlington Dismas House celebration. My son is moving back from Philadelphia. He could use a good dose of Dismas House. Do you need any board members?
Really? See, I didn't know that TJ. Oh my gosh, wow. That's really funny. Oh, hey, we already have a bunch of people signed up for Bess O'Brien now. Yay.
Oh, good.
Yes. So if you two have not registered, register. I'll send you the link.
Okay. I don't know if I've registered or not. Did I register yet?
I'm going to check. I'll check and see, Zara. Let's see. You have not registered yet.
Okay, then I better do it. What a great lead-in.
I know. When he said that, I was like, did Jeff plant that? Did Rita plant that? Did somebody plant that? But no. That's awesome. Hi, Dale. Dale's in the shadows. Hey, how's that new grandbaby?
Great.
Yeah, when do we get to see pictures?
Yeah, I know. I've got some, but I just got to figure out how to get them around.
Text them to Jeff and he can email them to us. Or you could just show us at like the next council meeting too. Yeah.
I have a question for John Roy. John, where are you from?
Me?
Can you hear me, John?
Oh.
I guess it's not. I guess it's just his picture.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So
I was wondering why it was so still. Yeah.
Hi, John Roy. John lives in Boston now, but used to live in Berkshire in the house just up the hill here.
Really?
Wonderful.
That's fun.
I'm not sure what. Hey, John.
Hi, it's Lynn. It's not John watching, it's Lynn.
Oh, it's Lynn. Okay. Well, we see John's smiling face.
John's face because he set the tablet up for me.
Okay. Well, hi, Lynn.
Hi, Eleanor.
Thank you for coming.
My face instead of yours.
Oh, yeah. You want to change the picture?
Yeah, how do you put my face instead of yours?
I have to go back to I have to go back to all the initial settings.
Oh, okay. We can't change it. Sorry.
Well, we hear you, Lynn.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, that was wonderful. Oh, now we have 10 registrants for Bess O'Brien. Very exciting. So I'm really excited for our watch party for that too. I'm going to be sending, I'll send a link just to everyone. So on the council for whoever wants to join. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Good. Yeah, that's good. I've seen it. It's a good one. We're seeing twice or more.